In this video, we're going to see how we can create an enemy that moves between a couple of points in our game, and if it hits us, we die. To add our enemy, we will start off by making a new scene, so we go up here to the top and click the plus icon. Now, as the root node for this scene, we're going to use an area 2D because our enemy is not going to have physics applied to it. We want to be able to collide with it, but it doesn't need to be a physics object. So we do an area 2D and create. Now for the children of the area 2D, we're going to want to add an animated sprite 2D. And we also want to add in a collision shape 2D. Now we'll start with our animated sprite. So if we select that and in the right hand side with the inspector, we open animation and choose the sprite frames and new sprite frames and click sprite frames again, which opens up our toolbar at the bottom. Now we want to add our frames in, so select the add frames button. And you want to go and search for the slime green, which is in the Brackeys tutorials assets and sprites folder. Now we need to select our frames. So we have 4 sprites along the way and 3 sprites down the way. So that's going to be a 4 on the horizontal and 3 on the vertical. They're all separated properly. Now I just want this animation in the middle. There's actually 3 separate animations here. So you've got a animation for the enemy waking up, one for the enemy taking damage, and this one is just a sort of idle animation where the enemy opens and closes its mouth. So I'm going to select these 4 frames here. Now we can press the F key to center and scroll in to have a look at our enemy, and let's press play to preview this animation. So it's a little bit slow for me, so I'm going to increase the frames per second down here to 8, looks good. Now I will drag my sprite up so it sits on the line here. I'm going to rename the animation to idle for good practice. Next, let's sort out our collision shape. So select the collision shape over on the left here, and then on the right hand side for the shape, we will do a new rectangle shape. And this is our collision area. So this is the area that if our player touches it, the player is going to die or take damage. So I'm going to drag my collision area up here, and then we can adjust the points until it goes around the enemy. Now I'm going to put the shape slightly inside of the enemy, and I'm not going to have the top boundary reach the very top of the enemy sprite here because it opens and closes its mouth. And eventually we're going to also make it so that when our player lands on the top of the sprite that we kill the sprite instead. So I'm just going to have the boundaries match the horizontal axis, but not worry about the vertical boundary at the top here. With that set up, let's rename our area 2D here to enemy, and let's save the scene. So scene, save scene, and make sure it saves in the scenes folder. Now, one other thing we forgot to do is if we go back to animated sprite 2D and click on the autoplay button here, that will make sure our animation plays when the game starts. So let's go over to our level now. And if we go to our scenes folder, we can find our enemy scene we just made and we can drag it into the game. So I'm going to drag him in just here, and I will start the game to see if the animation is working. And there we go. I can see that the enemy is animated. Now the next thing I'll show you how to do is how we can get the enemy to actually hurt the player, causing us to respawn. So if we reopen the enemy scene, what we will do is we will select the enemy root node here, and we will right click and attach a script. Now let's make sure that this saves inside of the scripts folder. So select scripts folder and open. Now we can save it as enemy and create. Now eventually we'll use these functions, so we will leave them here for now, but in the meantime, we are going to make sure enemy is still selected up here, the area 2D node, and on the right hand side, instead of inspector, let's open the node option, and we want the body entered signal here. So double click and connect. Now what we're saying is if this collision shape 2D or this area 2D is entered by something like the player, we want to respawn the player. So for best practice, we will say if the body.name is equal to player, then we will say body.respawn, very much the same as what we did when we created the kill zone. So exactly the same idea. So let's run this and test. If I touch the enemy, I respawn. Now let's see how we can get the enemy to move around a bit as if it is patrolling, so it's a bit harder for us to dodge. So I will head back over to my level here and open the 2D view. Now we need to add a couple of new child nodes to our level. So if we go to level and right click, add child node, we want a path 2D, and we also, as a child now of path 2D, right click, add child node, we want a path follow 2D. Now with your enemy, drag it so that it is a child of path follow 2D like this, So you now have path 2D, path follow 2D, and enemy. Now what we want to do is select the path 2D node here, and we have these new tools along the top, so we can select one that says add point. So it's going to let us add some points for which will be part of our path that our enemy here is going to follow. So the starting point is going to be roughly here for now. I will click, and then I'm going to get it to move to the end of this space over here. Now you'll notice our enemy has just disappeared from the screen. So if we select the enemy and press the F key, we can see he's gone all the way down here. Now the reason for this is the enemy's transform position over here on the right, so this is their position in the world, is 413494. Now because we've made it a child of path follow 2D, the enemy's position is now relative to the path follow 2D's position in the world. So the path follow 2D is at 413491, which is where the enemy used to be, that little orange point right here. And that is why the enemy has these same values. Except now the enemy's position is relative to the path follow 2D. Now that might have made no sense whatsoever. If it didn't, don't worry. On the enemy, just make sure you open the transform and input 0 for the X transform position and 0 for the Y transform position, and it will move back to where it was. Now, having set this initial path in path 2D, if we click on the path follow 2D, we can drag this progress ratio slider to see our enemy moving along the path we've given it. Now, one problem we've got is our enemy is going to go to the end of this, but they're not going back the way. So I'm going to add an additional point. So if I select the path 2D again, I will make sure I have add point selected, and I'm going to add one back at the beginning. Okay, so now the enemy is going to ping pong back and forth. So if we test this now by going to the path follow 2D and sliding the progress ratio slider, you'll see that the enemy does go back, but it also does this rotation at this point. Now to stop that from happening, we can click on the rotates button here. Now let's look at that again. And there we go, the enemy is going back and forth. Now the other issue is that the enemy is floating in the air and he's going at a bit of an angle. So I'm just going to adjust my points a bit by going to the path 2D, selecting this tool here, so select points, and I'm going to fix the position of my points. Now, our next job is to make it so that this path actually gets followed. So on our path follow 2D, we want to right click and attach a script because we need to use a script to trigger our path following. So just make sure to select the correct folder, which will be the scripts folder. And I'm going to rename this file to enemy path and click open. So now I'm saving in the scripts folder and I'm calling my script enemy path. So we'll create. Now it's a very simple script. We'll get rid of this first function and we're going to create a variable for our speed. And I will set that equal to 0.2 for the moment. And what we're going to do is inside this process function, we will say progress underscore ratio. Now that is referring to, if I go back to the scene view here, in the path follow 2D, we have this progress ratio, which is the amount of progress that the path has made. So you see when it reaches 1, it's completed. And if it's not at 1, it's on its way to being completed. So I'll go back to the script here. So we're updating the progress ratio with code, and we'll say progress ratio is equals delta times the speed. We run this now. There we go. Our enemy is following its path and bouncing. And still, if we get touched by the enemy, we die. And that is it for this video in adding a basic enemy. In a future video, we'll see how we can actually kill the enemy as well as be killed by it.